Ladies and gentlemen, slightly delayed video because I got a little bit excited. Yesterday I got news that load shedding would be returning. And obviously what I've done today is just wait for the announcements. But they haven't actually been forthcoming. Eskom's Slush put out a notification basically saying that load shedding would be returning. And I've tried to scour the news a lot. I can't actually see any notification of it actually happening. Now, for those of you who don't know, there are some issues with the power plants, but apparently, according to the news, it's not enough to push us into load shedding again. So who knows? Anyway, I'll keep you updated as the news progresses. So let's actually go on to the only news article of today that I want to talk about. And that is this government slush fund that they basically want to create. And for those of you who haven't already, click the bell icon, subscribe to the channel, help a brother out, help me on my journey to 100,000 subscribers. Anyway, let's talk about the slush fund. So this slush fund came to light because a DA MP asked a question to the Minister of Trade, Industry and Cooperation, Parks, what this whole kind of fund was. He said he had heard of this fund and he asked for clarification. So what the fund is, it's a fund that will be established that could be worth about 100 billion rand. So we know that when the ANC cadres see 100 billion rand, they're going to be like chomping at the bit and going, yeah, that sounds good. So what is the fund for? The fund is to assist exclusively black businesses, and the fund will come exclusively from the private sector. So what is the fund for? Well, transformation. I mean, what we've seen in the country is we see BE codes where basically you can't get a license unless you give away, a percentage of your company, anything from 20 to 25 to 50% of your company, for reasons because of transformation. And we've seen things like sectoral targets, where you basically say this is the required amount of bean countering you need in your company in order to comply with affirmative action, or what they typically refer to as equity. But you see, all of these things aren't enough. You see, if the government hasn't attempted to engineer the economy enough by exclusively favoring one racial group over another, well, this is another example of it. Now, where do we see this before? Well, we actually saw it during COVID when the government established a fund that would basically assist those in the tourist sector, if you recall. And that specific fund would be exclusively available to black businesses. And many individuals at the time said, hey, buddy, like COVID's impacting everybody, including white businesses and all the other businesses. It doesn't just impact black businesses. So how can you have a fund that exclusively assists black individuals? That's racist. And ultimately the fund was declared racist. Now, what exactly are the government attempting to do here? What they're attempting to do is they're saying that every business has a requirement to contribute 3% of their annual net profits to basically the development of black suppliers and training black individuals and so forth. It's all part of what they call the Transformation Fund. But at the moment, the firms have a voluntary idea of where their fund will go. So the firm can kind of say, well, I like this kind of company. I'm going to send some money to this charity, or maybe I'm going to train people in-house and I'm going to earmark the funds like that. And the firm basically has their own ideas on how to satisfy the requirement of the fund. And that's sufficient as long as they can demonstrate that they've taken 3% of their annual profits and they've contributed it towards this transformational goal idea. Now, the government's saying that that's not enough because, as you can hear, even the way I'm describing it to you, it's a little bit wishy-washy. It's all down to the private sector to determine what they're going to do. And the government says, you know what? They don't trust the private sector enough. What they would actually prefer to do is that the private sector must give this 3% to them, and the government will allocate it in the form of grants or training programs, most likely grants for business creation. And that will be exclusively used to transform black lives and make the black economy thrive. Because according to the government, the black economy cannot thrive because it's under the yoke of, white monopoly capital and all those that came here previously, the basic monopoly type bullshit argument. Now, I for one look at this, and many individuals have asked the same question that I'm asking, and that is, what makes the government think that us, the normal citizens of the state, trust them to use these funds in a reasonable and productive manner? And the answer, I'm sure even you, ladies and gentlemen, will say is, well, we don't. Because nobody trusts the government with money. Now, that's not because we're racist or we just don't like the government. It's because we've seen their track record. Let us not forget that Ramaphosa said the 500 billion that would be allocated during COVID, all of it would be subject to the Auditor General. None of it would go missing. And it all went missing. 500 billion is not a small amount of money. Nobody in their right mind thinks when the government gets their hands on money that the money is going to be well spent. Because we all know the latter. It is not going to be well spent because it's not their money. They don't care. Sokolika has raised the argument that what this basically is tantamount to is expropriating 3% for the government's use. Because it's not voluntary. You have to do it. The government says, according to the proposed rules, that you'll be fined if you don't. And you'll be excluded from government contracts if you don't. I mean, this whole idea that you'll be excluded from government contracts is kind of baloney anyway, because you're going to get excluded whether you want to or not. Because let's face it, the type of individuals that they want to exclude are people that don't have the right skin pigment. If you have the right skin pigmentation, then great, come through and we'll pay you. And like we've seen recently in the Eastern Cape, where they were supposed to have done forms of school transformation, 1.2 million rand got paid to a company and the company disappeared. Many such scenarios of this. This is not unique. So we know these funds are not going to be well used. You're going to expropriate the funds. They're going to go missing. And some individuals have started to say, don't call it a transformation fund. Call it the tenderpreneur fund. Because this, according to some individuals, is a better description of what the fund will ultimately be used for. Now, I, for one, have to ask the questions. For how long are we going to be adopting BE, equity-based affirmative action, funds that are exclusively to a certain sector of the economy? This has been going on for 30 years. And if these ideas worked in the way that they say that they do, the economy would be thriving. Hundreds of billions of rands have been dedicated to this idea. And it's a lofty idea. It has merit. Because any capitalist would like to see the economy grow and the middle class grow. It's good to have people with money in the economy. It doesn't matter what their skin pigmentation is. Because the more people with disposable income, the easier it is to sell goods, which enriches everyone. So you cannot say that what the white population wants is only, like 6 million people with means. That's stupid. That's not a good economic argument for anybody with a brain cell. With that being said, if these economic plans worked, we wouldn't have to keep forcing the rules, making them stricter and more draconian, to the detriment of international investors, to the detriment of the people that were born here, who feel that they can no longer pursue a life here, that they have to pursue a life abroad because the sectoral targets, the ownership structures, the licensing criteria is so heavily stacked against them that it doesn't matter if they were born with means, they will never achieve anything, for the simple argument that their skin pigmentation does not allow it. If these ideas worked in the way that they constantly envisaged, our country would rival America right now. But it doesn't. It's a failed state. It's a state that's getting worse. All this while Ramaphosa goes around the world saying, we need more investment, we need more investment, we need to grow our economy. Let's use the argument that the Brits used under Margaret Thatcher. To grow an economy, you need all citizens active, regardless of who. All citizens active. That's male, female, white, black, Indian, colored, doesn't matter. And the only way to do that is to give up on central planning and allow the economy to have forms of life of its own so that it can go out there and create better futures for everyone, regardless of their skin pigmentation and the past that's come before. But that's just my view. Clearly the government doesn't agree. Sokolika does agree. And so I would say to you, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't already, give Sokolika a shout out, send them a donation. They really could use your money. They could use your support because at the moment, companies like them are the only ones fighting for your rights. Until next time, bye.